Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GlobalLogic Cafe LinkedIn Live Conversations. Our LinkedIn Live conversations on the GlobalLogic Cafe are going to be all about careers, technology, leadership, and diversity. We welcome our speakers for today. Introducing Amy Hanlon Rondemick, Chief People Officer, GlobalLogic. Let's welcome Amy with a huge round of applause.
Good morning and good evening. My name is Amy Hanlon Rodemick, or just Amy HR, and I'm the Chief People Officer at GlobalLogic. I'm very excited to host Irwin Anand from Udemy today. Irwin leads Udemy's consumer business in India and APAC. His charter is to help millions of learners in the region learn the necessary skills to be better at work and in life. Irwin is responsible for deepening Udemy's investments in the region and optimizing the Udemy student and instructor experience based on the needs of consumers within APAC. Irwin has been an internet growth leader with OLX India and Yahoo. Prior to Udemy, he started his career as an engineer and has reinvented himself in his career a few times, dabbling in multiple business functions to be where he is today. Welcome to all of you who've joined us today. We're happy to have you with us and encourage you to ask questions via the Q&A panel. We will save those questions till the end of the discussion and try to answer as many as we can today. So Irwin, you and I have something in common. We both worked at Yahoo. What an amazing company with a great culture.
Exactly. So delighted to be engaging with a fellow Yahooite. And thank you so much for having me here. I really look forward to this conversation with you and the audience today.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's get started. So the first question that I have for you is, while I know we both believe that learning is always important, why do you think the concept of lifelong learning is truly more of an imperative now than ever?
Okay, so to contextualize an answer to this question, let me maybe jog back our memories to the pre-pandemic time. So, which is like about 8-9 months back. Let's jog back our memories to Jan 2020. Now, this is an era which we're living in, which is called the era of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, the fourth industrial revolution, what are the key themes which characterize this particular era? A few themes which are relevant are: this is an era which is characterized by a fast pace of change, which impacts everybody in all walks of life. The kind of change we've seen in the past 5 years is cumulatively potentially higher than what we've seen in the last 20 years. The second characteristic of this era is heightened globalization. Our economies, our stock markets, our supply chains are now more connected than ever before in the history of human mankind. The third key characteristic of this era is digital and technology and internet impacting all walks of life, be it as consumers, be it as service providers. I think our lives are in some way or the form, multiple shapes and forms, being influenced by digital and technology. Now, come the pandemic in March 2020, what we're seeing is a heightened, anchorage in all these themes. Let's talk about change, right? Pace of change. Suddenly, overnight, our workplace and our lives got disrupted overnight. We were forced to adjust to working from an office, to working from home, and potentially also question the norms which existed in the past, and now we're asking that question: do we actually even need an office? Was it at all point of time, was it always required? The second thing which happened, let's talk about globalization, right? The virus doesn't see any boundaries. The way it has spread, unfortunately, across the world, it also kind of makes us reflect that how connected our lives are, even though we are in different parts of the world. You are in the US right now, I'm in India right now, but we're living very, very similar and parallel lives in our respective countries. The third theme being digital and disruption coming from technology, right? And we realize that companies which are able to thrive and survive during the period of pandemic are the ones which are anchored on online, digital, and technology. In fact, a lot of companies which are not digitally anchored are now figuring out how to stay relevant in today and in the times to come. So from our vantage point, I think the themes remain the same. Pandemic has essentially accelerated or brought into the forefront the trends which are already there and were impacting our lives. And if I were to think loud, right, fast pace of change, digital and tech impacting every walk of life, what does that imply? It implies that we as employees, we as professionals, we need to continuously keep pace with change. We need to continuously skill ourselves to continue to stay relevant and stay relevant for today, but also be prepared for the future which lies ahead. Yeah. One of the times when we used to actually take a college degree or a college education, and that would unlock us to actually access a job and continue to stay relevant and stick with that job for our entire lives. Yeah. Today, when we enter a job, we realize that, yeah, we take up a role, but the job description of the role changes over a period of time. And skills which we need to be acquainted with, to be effective in that job, they also change with time. And hence, I think in today's day and age, careers are also being reinvented. People need to reinvent their careers multiple times during their lifespan. And you introduced me as somebody who was a software engineer. Let me reflect back on my career as well. So yes, I started about 21 years back as a software engineer writing software for base stations, which are the wireless base stations which carry network traffic. 4 years down the line, I moved into product management, marketing, and sales. 4 years after that, I moved into growth roles in consumer internet organizations. And as part of that, I have been a steward for multiple functions, be it marketing, product, engineering, or customer experience. And in all my switches, I have had to personally reinvent myself as well. In fact, the first thing which I did when I joined Udemy back in Jan 2019 was take a course on Udemy, which was called Structured Query Language SQL for Dummies. Which means that I, at my level of leadership within the organization, needed to invest in myself to learn the skills which make me effective in the context of Udemy. Mm-hmm. Now I'm 30 plus, and I am conscious than ever before that for me to be relevant, I need to continuously invest in myself and in my skills. Mm-hmm. And the same trend, we're seeing that the sentiment coming from employees all over the world, employees in India. And I'll quote a few numbers just to set the context that people themselves now realize that these key trends are there and they impact them. So we recently, last month, released what we call as the Skills Gap Survey Report, which we launched in multiple countries, but I'll quote some numbers specific to India, assuming that a bulk of this audience is from India. So when talked about skills gap, 92% of the 1,000 respondents mentioned that they acknowledge there's a skills gap, and 76% of them mentioned that they are impacted by the skills gap. 82% of the people said that the college degree which they did does not equip them for the skills which they need to be effective at work. 84% said that their skills right now are inadequate for the job at hand. 76% people said that they foresee that in the next 5 years, their job function or their job role might get disrupted or replaced by artificial intelligence or machines. Yeah, 91% people mentioned that they have had to skill themselves to be effective at what they are doing right now. So look at these numbers, right? These numbers are all upwards of 3/4, right? And might surprise a lot. But I think for us, from the vantage point of Udemy and you as a vantage point as a people leader, I think this is a reflection of the fact that people today, they're anxious about their jobs and careers. They realize that they are in this era of fourth industrial revolution. And they realize that skill is the new currency of this economy. And more importantly, lifelong learning is what it mandates for people to be continue to stay effective and successful in their roles. The same sentiment we're hearing from employers as well, right? So leaders and companies, they are again faced with the same challenges of relevance and ability to innovate for future, which means that leaders are also looking to equip their teams with access to courses and skills which make them effective, and also build in a culture of learning within their organizations. So people make use of those courses and those skills to continue to stay effective.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really interesting. You were talking about the fourth industrial revolution. It's really the pace of technological advancement is just, it feels like it's constantly accelerating. Every time I blink, there's something new out there. And absolutely, there's this need to constantly re-upskill and keep relevant. So how can we incorporate that into our lives? I mean, we're all so busy. What's your advice there?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, I think we've established the fact that lifelong learning is the need of the hour, and there's no denying that fact. It's like undeniable. Everybody needs to invest in that. And I think first and foremost, the important thing is for people to get that into their consciousness. And I think change comes from first acknowledging that something needs to be invested in. And then once it's in your consciousness, then you start putting an effort around it. In fact, in our research, we've done a lot of consumer research in India and outside in the world. People believe that they are now more than ever before responsible for their own careers and the direction of their careers, and they need to invest in themselves to continue to remain relevant and compete in this highly cutthroat job market of today. So the onus is on us. Now, a lot of people come to me and they ask me, Irwin, what should be the next hot skill that I should be investing myself in, right? What is the trending skill on Udemy? So whatever is the trending skill, I should actually be taking that. And I keep on giving them the same answer over and over again. And that answer is, I think the most important skill in today's economy is the skill to learn, the ability to learn, knowing to learn and knowing how to learn. Having that growth mindset and having that curiosity and knowing that you need to learn, whatever it might be. You might not know what you need to learn, but it has to be always in the consciousness around wanting to learn to continue to stay relevant, right? And if you have that thought process, yeah, you'll come to a platform, either you directly come to Udemy as an example, or your employer provides you access to Udemy for Business, and then you start discovering, right? And when you start discovering, every person finds their own learning paths. They discover their own learning paths. There are some people who are specialists, so they start with a technology or a skill or a role or a job function, and they go really deep. Mm-hmm. There are others who kind of focused on breadth. I know a lot of marketers. They started their initial experience on Udemy by doing courses related to marketing, which is digital marketing, brand management, and so on and so forth. But very soon they started branching out and they started doing courses around business forecasting, business planning, financial fundamentals, data analytics, and so on and so forth. So everybody figures out their own, I would say, learning path once they have access to a platform which provides them the opportunity to explore, and that influences their career choices and their career direction as well. Mm-hmm. In fact, the beauty of Udemy is that Udemy for Business as a tool also allows employers to get access to these learning paths which their employees might be foraying in, and leverage that to actually determine career planning for an individual within the organization. Yeah. Now, your question, coming back to your original question, which is how can we're also busy, right? So how can we create time for learning? We are all distracted by stuff which we need to do, right? And I'll take two directional answers. Maybe I'll answer it through the context of an employer first, and maybe give examples of how Udemy does it. And maybe you can add with what GlobalLogic does as well. We're always here to learn from each other. So we do believe that a culture of learning and gets driven from the top. And the fact is that we need to tell people that learning is important for us as an organization. And it's okay to take time out for learning. And we need to make time out for learning as well. In Udemy, how we do it is, so one of the themes which we use internally is we have a time block in the company, and which we call as the DEAL R. Now, DEAL is an acronym. It stands for drop everything and learn. Yeah, which means that particular hour, everybody within the organization, and it's a calendar block. Nobody can schedule meetings during that time, not even our CEO. Everybody during that time has to go to Udemy or any other platform. It doesn't necessarily need to be Udemy, and you need to learn something, right? And then you need to share. Yeah. I think more than just that particular hour, right? It creates the messaging within people that it's important to pause and invest in yourself, right? And create time and space for it. I think you do a lot with other interventions as well. Do some gamification around learning, uh, create competitions, and I would say some kind of reward people who are learning more than others, and so on and so forth. And I think one of the most important things is also to value people who are learning and create opportunities for lateral moves within the company as well. Acknowledging that that somebody who it's easier to actually if you have a new job opening within the company, it's easier transitioning somebody who's already within the organization.
Oh, looks like we've lost. Oh, there we are. Okay.
Yeah. Should we continue?
Yeah, you got stuck there for a second, but you're back.
Okay, perfect. So I'll continue. So all internal job postings, it's not a surprise to me that in Udemy there are people who join in customer service. They've transitioned to a search engine optimization role, and now they're in product marketing and so on and so forth. Because the company values reskilling, and companies values people transitioning and switching by incorporating new skills and move into functions and careers which they keep on discovering that appeal to them. Yeah. Now, look at from an individual's vantage point. Finally, the individual's vantage point, right? So we all know that we need to learn. I know I need to learn, but the challenge is that I don't create time, right? It's not really urgent. It's not immediate, and I procrastinate. And that's something that plagued me, I think, when I started my journey around learning, roughly about 8-9 years back. That's something which was a hurdle for me to start. And frankly, I've practiced a few techniques, and these techniques are mostly around self-discipline, how to avoid procrastination. One of the techniques which has worked for me is what I call as the Pomodoro technique. There's a 25 minutes course on Pomodoro technique on Udemy. So I'd encourage you guys to actually go through that course. It will give you techniques and around how to invest in something which you really want to invest, but you've always been procrastinating. And that again comes from that culture of learning, right? So you'll take the course on procrastinating because you want to learn something new. So it's like a cycle.
Nice. Well, to answer your question, GlobalLogic, we have it's a very unique organization. We do professional engineering services, and so I believe very strongly that we actually have a really fantastic career opportunity for our people here, where they can work on a project and then move to a different project down the line and try something completely new. So we're really working right now on trying to focus that for our employees, help them understand what kind of opportunities are out there. And we're focused on what we're starting to call success paths, where we want to make it really clear to people what their path could look like, whether they're walking in the door as a new college graduate and they want to be, chief technical officer someday. What does that path look like? And it's not linear, right? It could be a little bit over here, and then you zigzag and you go up a little bit, and you build your career over time. So we're focused heavily on defining those possible success paths for people, as well as lining up learning for that. And then also we're looking at implementing some new tools that would be able to help us make some of that learning more accessible to our people. So we don't have a cool acronym like deal, but that is great. I love that. I just took a note on that. I'll have to come up with something cool like that will resonate with our employees. So you know what, I'm actually really curious, and one of the things that's been so interesting to me is now everybody's working from home. We're listening to what people's experience is like and what it's like to work in a virtual world. And one thing I hear a lot is, there's a blend of the personal and professional lives, which can be very challenging. I know a lot of us have children at home, and I have 2 jobs now. I'm the CPO of GlobalLogic, and I'm a homeschool teacher, which I never signed up for, but that's okay. We're working it out. So I'm curious, during this very unique time in our history, what trends are you seeing on Udemy? Are there certain courses that people are accessing more? And then also follow-up question to that is, what resources do you have for working parents or something for the children just to keep us all sane during this time?
Yeah. So yeah, come March 2020, and the pandemic hit all of us really hard, unfortunately, and anxiety around jobs. So people started losing jobs. People were confined to their homes. We had to change the way we work. We had to adapt. That led to a huge surge in terms of learning on Udemy. So during the first month, immediate fallout of the pandemic, we had roughly about a 400+% increase in course enrollments on Udemy as a platform. And what we realized, and this was accompanied by a huge surge in new learners on the platform as well. While people who were already on the platform, they came back to the platform to consume more courses, enroll into more courses. But there was a huge surge of people who'd never been on learning platforms coming onto the platform and taking their first course on the site. What we also saw as part of that was that while there's been an increase in breadth of courses which are being consumed on the platform. When I say breadth, so be it technology or business or personal enrichment, we've seen an increase in the diversity of courses which are being consumed on the platform. So while maybe a bulk of our audience would be the technology folks, right? So for instance, areas like neural networks and TensorFlow, some of these trending terms, they continue to stay relevant. But as people were locked down in their homes and they had to manage work-life balance, and they had to meet their aspirations in terms of mental fitness, personal fitness, and stuff like that. So we saw a huge surge in courses which around categories like Pilates to stay fit or meditation, as an example. People had more time at their disposal to invest in their own hobbies, something which they had always wanted to, but they could not. So we saw a huge surge in course consumption around categories like ukulele, learning the instrument, or drawing. And then finally, again, from a business perspective as well, I don't know whether it is latched to a trend, but we saw a huge surge in courses related to business communications, stock trading, financial management. I don't know, maybe the pandemic also created opportunities for people to make money. So I don't know about that. And then from the Udemy for Business perspective, our corporate learning offering, we saw a huge surge in courses around productivity, especially in the work from home context and personal enrichment. When I talk about productivity, it means courses around managing virtual teams or telecommuting. When it comes to personal enrichment, themes like self-discipline, resilience. So we saw a huge increase in courses being consumed in those topics. Now, when it comes to your final comment or question on what do we have for our kids, right? Because one of the key challenges in terms of working from home is that, we need to manage ourselves, our profession, and our family as well. I'm the father of 2 kids, aged 10 and 7. And I was also tasked with figuring out how do I engage them and engage my kids productively at a time when they have a lot of time at their disposal and not too many avenues to spend that time on. So this is the YouTube generation, right? So our kids, they are more familiar with technology than we are. So I introduced them to Udemy, and I discovered that my son, he's like the breadth guy. He does not go deep into a topic. So his first course was a course on piano fundamentals. But then he started exploring elsewhere, and then he took a course on coding, which was Scratch, which is a programming language. And then he's now graduated to doing a Python's basics course. So I found it valuable for my family. My daughter, who's younger, she's a creative one, and she's more focused. She's sticking to sketching courses and drawing courses. As a matter of fact, we've seen a 500% surge in courses being courses in the category of arts for kids, and 400% surge in categories like coding for kids.
Nice. Well, you just saved my day because I have a creative one at home too. So I'm going to direct her over to you so she can take some more art classes.
Exactly.
So talking about the YouTube generation, and at GlobalLogic, we have a massive population of millennial and Gen Z employees. And these are folks that are digital natives, right? They are absolutely used to working online. I know my son is 17 and he goes on YouTube and watches these bite-sized learning activities, right? He learns about physics in 10 minutes. And it's fascinating to me. And I'm really curious to get your take on the future of work and keeping in mind the pandemic and how it's sort of shifting our ways of working, and then thinking about the millennials and the Gen Z and the types of content they're looking for and in what environment they're looking for. What are your thoughts on that in the future of work?
Yeah, so I can understand the context of this question. I'm also like not really the current generation. Maybe you and I share the same generation. And we all know that whether we like it or not, digital and tech is now all pervasive, right? So we moved from voice calling to WhatsApp, FaceTime, and now Zoom. We moved from linear TV, which is broadcast TV, to on-demand streaming TV. We moved from Microsoft Office to Microsoft Office 365 to now Google, the Google Docs and stuff like that. Moved from ordering on the phone, and we moved to essentially food ordering apps. So whether we like it or not, I think digital and tech, you and I, in our generation as well, we need to continue to adapt and thrive and survive. And if we've been able to adapt and on some of the apps and the themes which I'm talking about, right, there's no reason why we should not be able to move from traditional classroom learning to online learning. It requires that change in mindset and that openness to accept a new trend and the ability to adapt and learn, right? Now, let me talk about how learning used to happen in the past, right? Now, I joined a career 20 years back. And those were the days when we used to be herded into a classroom to learn something, right? And out of a batch of, say, 200, only, say, 10, 15 could actually get into a classroom session. So we had to wait for our batch or our turn. We had to take time out from our regular work and maybe spend 2-3 days in a room filled with other people to actually go through that course end to end. We had to keep pace with everybody. It was not personalized. It was essentially a teacher teaching everybody in that classroom at the same pace. So somebody who's fast, maybe for them it was a slow pace. Somebody who's slow, for them it was relatively fast paced, as an example. But that is something which we were used to, right? Which is we had to go to where learning was delivered. We had to create time for learning. The way previously in broadcast TV, right? So there was a time when news used to come, and if we miss it, we miss it, right? We had to create time for it, yeah. And today, because of underlying technology and the way learning can be delivered through digital, right? In fact, learning is going to where people are at their moment of need, right? Meeting them at their own pace, at their own time, at their own place, right? So that's a significant shift which is happening. It's becoming in demand, just like on-demand content streaming. So from that perspective, this is a big change which has happened. And I think digital as an anchor of learning, I think it has a lot of advantages. It's accessible to more people than ever before. It's affordable. Because it's affordable, it can be offered to each and every employee, as an example, within the organization, rather than limited to a few people intervention. It is adaptable. It is flexible. And then finally, it's dynamic as well, which means that courses on Udemy, an instructor immediately changes or adds a course module in case the framework has changed, something new has happened. Or immediately, whenever a new technology gets launched, the next day you have a course on Udemy, which essentially covers that. So from our vantage point, companies like Udemy for Business, online learning is now the engine which is driving innovation, which is helping companies like you drive innovations for the future. The pandemic has essentially accelerated all of that. It has brought in acceptance of online learning, brought it to mainstream, led to a new normal. And we believe this new normal is here to stay.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. I think there's some really great questions that are starting to come in through the chat here. One that's really relevant to what you were just saying. So I wanted to ask a question from our audience. Do you think only digital can do what a classroom model can do?
At least from a Udemy vantage point, all forms of learning will continue to be relevant, right? You need to figure out what is the right solve for that occasion, for that movement, for that environment, for that construct. So I learn from books. I continue to read books, right? I am a voracious reader of books. I also read go through audiobooks. I don't really do classroom interventions anymore. I do learn from digital. So from a vantage point, I think people will continue to learn through multiple interventions. But at the same time, I think what is most accessible, what is more effective, what is the most personalized is the online mode of learning these days. At the same time, we are not dismissive of traditional classroom modes of education. They will continue to stay relevant. But at the same time, classroom education was designed, especially for the workplace, it was designed for an era which does not exist today. That's our thought process.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because, as you know, those of us with a few gray hairs, we're definitely used to more of a classroom type environment. And I just recently taught a graduate class at Golden Gate University that was 100% virtual. And I was a little skeptical. I was like, how am I going to connect with my students if I can't be there in person and we can interact? But it worked. We managed to make it work, and I think a lot of us who aren't as used to learning in a virtual environment are being sort of forced to in this day and age, and finding that we actually can make it work. So plus there's like breakout sessions and things that are helpful.
Exactly. So this session between you and me, I think it's extremely effective. I couldn't have visualized that this will be as effective 6 months back, right? So it would be that seamless and easy and allow us to engage and interact with so many diverse people and in such a seamless way. Now, this change, which has been triggered by an external incident, allows us to potentially realize that there's a different norm which potentially is better suited for us. And I completely agree with you, right? Digital as a means to do synchronous learning, asynchronous learning, mentor-driven learning, all of these formats deserve exploration and investment.
So here's another good question. What do you think is more important, having a skill which could make money or having a job is enough? I can tell you my opinion. I think, that ongoing curiosity and ongoing refresh of your skill set is only going to help you build and sustain your career. And not only is it good for you personally and your personal enrichment, but also it helps you become more marketable. So if something were to happen, let's say you lost your job, or your industry went sideways in times of COVID or something, then you have more that you can fall back on and more that you can use to market yourself. But what do you think?
I think this is a very personal dependent question in terms of what the answer would be. I think it all depends on what gives you satisfaction, right? Does money give one satisfaction, or being able to accomplish something really good and enjoying the experience or the journey of doing that, does that give you satisfaction? Maybe eventually it could be a blend of both as well. So if you have a great journey, if you have a great experience, if you've been able to create an impact, and in the process you've been able to make money as well, I think that would be the sweetest spot.
That's great. Here's another great question. Before and during COVID, do you see any differences in overall course completion percentages? Are folks completing their courses?
I haven't seen that data point personally. As a company, we actually don't look at course completion rates as a metric of course satisfaction. We have our learning experts within the company, and frankly, there are people who don't complete a course, but they leave a 5-star rating to the course. That's because people who take a course on Udemy courses are all practice-oriented, practical-oriented. They help you solve a problem at hand. Do a task which you're stuck at, right? And there could be a case when you take a course and you just go through a particular module or a lecture, which gives you the tidbits to unblock yourself. It's like a reference book, right? And then once you get unblocked, you go back to your work, and you always have that course available to you for posterity because it's lifetime access, especially on the consumer marketplace, to go back and leverage other pieces of the course material later on as you need it, right? So from that perspective, we've seen no changes in ratings and reviews, the pattern. In fact, our retention rates as well. So this is one metric from a growth perspective, which is really critical for us. We have acquired a lot of new users on the platform, but how do we retain them? Are they coming back to consume the courses? Are they coming back to repurchase more courses? Are they following a learning path or a learning journey on the platform? All matrices are extremely solid even after COVID hit us. So that surge is leading to that incremental delta or incremental base, and people are sticking and realizing the value of online learning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Here's another good one. In continuation with what Amy said, what is your take on the future of work? Not only the learning perspective, with a holistic approach industry-wide. One of the things that I'm noticing is, and I'm hearing this a lot from our employee base, is this bleeding of the work life and the personal life going into each other, and a lot of those borders and those boundaries sort of disappearing. And I'm trying to work with my own team to say, we got to set some boundaries here. We've got to say, I'm not working 24 hours a day. And how do we need to be thinking about that future of work, right? How do we need to help people see that you don't need to be working 24 hours a day? It is a virtual world, but that doesn't need to bleed into your life. And just in general on the future of work, what are your thoughts on that?
I think we're all learning and adapting. This is something which was thrust on us, and something which we believe could be a new norm as well for certain job functions. As a company, we've decided, at least until March, we will not be reopening office operations. And when the pandemic hit, I think as a leader within the company, it led to a lot of anxiety and a lot of, I would say, we did some things which didn't work. As an example, we thought that once the pandemic hit, what we need to do is we need to get people gathered together more often because they're missing seeing each other. So we used to have daily hurdles amongst teams and people. And we do need to have more meetings for people to stay connected with each other, to know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But in about, I think, a fortnight or two, what we realized is that we're starting to get feedback that there's a lot of meeting overhead. And that meetings are becoming a huge distraction in terms of ability of people to manage their own work. So we had to adapt, and we now have no meeting Fridays. We try to ensure that all meetings are max 30 minutes. Attention spans around Zoom meetings beyond 30 minutes is really low. We're also learning. So we instrumented something called internally, which we call as the work from home canvas. This is kind of a document which everybody fills, and you discuss with your manager. I've discussed with my manager, and so on and so forth. And that lists down in terms of how am I comfortable working at home? Mm-hmm. What are the schedules which are relevant for me? When am I available? When am I not available? What are my anxieties? How do I want to collaborate and work with others? And so on and so forth. Because we know that working from home, everybody has their own unique personal circumstances, and there's no same set pattern or expectation from everybody, and everybody will need to adapt to their own routines which work best for them. And it's important to also set that that discipline that beyond 5 p.m. in the evening will not work. So I think as organizations we are all learning. In fact, I'm really pleased that we as an organization responded really well. So Shelly, who's our L&D head, just in the week after pandemic, she released a course around how to work from home. That course is now available as a free course on Udemy. It's a 30 minutes course. And I think for everybody who's trying to adapt and figure out how best to manage working from home, that course has amazing tidbits on some tips and tricks that can help you manage your work life, stay healthy, spend time for yourself, ensure that you're able to retain sanity while kids are around, and so on and so forth.
That's great. I'll have to check that out. Here's a great question. I feel that just viewing and listening will not fully fulfill the practical component of learning. How does GL achieve this, and what does Udemy plan? Well, I am absolutely with you on that, that you can't, just viewing and listening isn't enough. You need that interaction, right? And that's something that we traditionally reserve for a classroom-based learning model. It's tricky when you have a large classroom, right? I was in a class last weekend and they created breakout rooms. It was a large group, it was about 100 of us, but they created these breakout rooms where we could go off with maybe 4 or 5 other students and just talk. And we were given a question to sort of tackle together. I was fortunate with the class I was teaching this summer. I had a small class. There was 8 students, so we could have conversations. But I totally agree. You don't want the talking head. You want to have some sort of interactivity. But what do you think about that?
No, I think there's space for all kinds of learning, and it all depends whether you kind of it all depends on the kind of learner you are as well. How self-motivated you are, how much self-oriented you are, how much of mentorship and tutoring do you need as well. What is more comfortable to you as well. It also depends on the topic at hand. There are certain topics which are better explained or learned through practice, right? In fact, Udemy courses also have a lot of practice material, by the way. So instructors, they create a lot of assessments, quizzes, assignments, and so on and so forth. But it's all self-regulated because it's asynchronous learning, right? But there are some people who definitely feel value in synchronous mode of education, in more being able to be taken through a journey rather than them themselves responsible for that journey end to end. So as an organization, we believe that those experiences are valuable and relevant, and we ourselves definitely are exploring at some of those incremental builds which allow us to take people closer to outcomes.
It's interesting because it would be nice to be able to choose. Like if you are taking a class, I want to do the independent route where I'll just do it on my own, or I want more of a classroom type interactive model. That's interesting because I have 2 kids. They're very different. One, give him independent study and he'll do it and he'll be great. My other, my daughter, she needs that interaction. So that's really interesting. I mean, everybody does learn differently, right? Oh, here's a question for you. Would Udemy and companies like yours foray into personal tutoring services as well?
I can't speculate, so can't comment on this. But I can definitely say that all forms of learning, digital learning, which can scale well, are areas of opportunity and investment and disruption for those who are in this space.
Yeah, good. All right, we have time for one more question, and then we're out of time. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. So here's the question: should online learning be regulated, as classroom teaching are regulated by big government organization, and these regulations are based on age and other factors of the person?
My answer would be no. Just because the premise of the company and what we are. So Udemy started as with a vision or a philosophy that the best teachers are necessarily not found in a classroom environment.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a teacher, right? Irwin could be a teacher because we have honed a skill and practiced it on the job. And who better to teach that skill than us, right? The way we teach it, if we were to give a free rein in terms of creating a course, we will create the course with a curricula or a pedagogy which we believe will be extremely practice oriented, which allows people to learn the skill and immediately apply it on a task at hand, right? So a platform like Udemy allows instructors and teachers to create their own curriculum, create their own pedagogy, and orient it in a way that they are not constrained by the rules of curriculum. They really need to adhere to a specific way of pedagogy and so on and so forth. And in today's user-generated world, that leads to the best output and effectiveness. So I don't think too much regulation does not really help. End of the day, we need to give learner the power to choose as well. So on Udemy, any learner, they have a wide variety of courses. We have 130,000 courses to choose from on the platform. And for any one topic, a learner can choose from amongst maybe 100 different teachers. And Udemy gives the power to choose the right course from the right teacher, which works for you. And I think that selection or that choice is extremely important in the world of today.
I agree. I agree. Well, it's been really nice chatting with you. You've given me some resources. I've taken some notes here already on some classes I'm going to look into, especially the one that helps kids with art, some art classes for my young ones. So thank you for that. I really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you to everybody who's joined us today. If we didn't get to all your questions, I apologize. We have a limited time here, but thank you for the great questions you submitted, and I hope everybody has a wonderful evening or day wherever you happen to be in the world.